Assalamu alaikum. This is Huma Islam, your Islamiyat teacher, and today's topic is the Battle of Badr from the Madani life of the biography of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That is a topic from P1, chapter 3. Okay, the Battle of Badr, as you can see, I've got a timeline there. It was on the 17th of Ramadan. It is also called Yawm al-Furqan. It occurred in 2 AH and 624 CE. If we just if we go through the rough timeline of the event, you will see that in January 624 CE, Sufyan's caravan, I have written over here, Abu Sufyan's trade caravan returning from the Levant. Then Muslim force were advanced to attack the caravan. The force of 300 formed to recover profits from the Muslims' wealth and belongings consumed for this trip. The caravan, basically everything that the Muslims left behind, that was used for this trade caravan, and Sufyan was bringing back the profits from what they had used. And then Abu Sufyan sent a letter to the Makkans for help, and the Makkans gathered a troop of 1,000 in number after receiving the letter. Sufyan reaches back to Makkah, so he calls off the need for troops. He sends a rider to Abu. So Abu Sufyan reaches back, and the Makkans carry on to fight. They refuse to pull back because, as we know, they were warlords. And then the Muslims camp at Badr. They take charge of the water wells, and they camp at a higher ground in which the sun is at their backs. And then the Prophet's prayer at night, he prayed all night for his small group of Muslims to win and for Islam to prevail. And then Allah blessed the Prophet ﷺ and the Muslims with blessings. He helped the Muslims with 1,000 angels. It rained for peace and tranquility. And due to this rain, fresh water was collected for wudu. And the companions, another blessing was that the companions fell asleep. And then the first stage of battle occurs in which it's the war of words, in which poets come forward first, and then they would start saying things against the other party. Then the second stage of battle starts, which was individual combat, and Utbah, Shayba, and Walid come from the Makkan side, and Hamza, Abu Ubaidah, and Ali Raziyallahu anhu comes from the Muslim side. The third stage of battle is the general combat. The military formation was of a phalanx, in which the formation of a circle. So the enemy, when you're forming a circle, it seems like you're surrounded by a huge number of people. So their backs are not towards the enemy. And catapults, stones, and swords were used. The outcome of this battle was that 70 kuffar were killed, 70 captured, and 14 Muslims were martyred. In the war booty, the Muslims got 115 camels, 14 horses, clothes, leather, carpets, and war equipment. Okay, this is the plain of Badr. This is the recent present day plain where Badr was fought. Now, Muslims leave for Badr. A war council was held with the Ansar and Muhajir. Ansar were given the option, as by pledge of Aqaba, they didn't have to fight outside Makkah. According to the pledge, they were only supposed to defend Medina. They were not obliged to fight outside of Medina. So they were given, the will that do you want to fight or not. So Sa'd bin Mu'az spoke on behalf of all of the Ansars, and they said, why won't we fight? 313 Muslims went to fight at Badr. They only had 2 horses and 70 camels. Muslims took control of only the water wells, the water wells, and they also camped on a high ground, and the sun was at their backs. The benefit of these things was that they had water, and camping on a high ground, it was a sandy high ground. And when it rained at night, the sandy high ground, it got stiffer. And when they were fighting in the morning, the sun being at their backs was that the sun was going into the eyes of the kuffar. Muslims scared and anxious. It's a natural. It's a natural human weakness that when you have to face an army or face some sort of turmoil, that a person is scared. Recent, like India and Pakistan's escalation, even teenagers felt the same way when they could hear firing and a missile or something like that. So Muslims were scared and anxious. Allah sent down rain so that rain, it has this peaceful effect on people and made them fall asleep. Imagine when you're anxious and you're suffering from anxiety, you're depressed, you don't know what to do, you can't sleep. So Allah sending sleep down for them was also a very huge blessing. The Prophet ﷺ spent the whole night in worship. And what was he praying for? He was saying, O Lord, forget not the promise of assistance. If this little band were to perish, there will be none to offer worship to thee. So remember, if you're answering a question based on the Battle of Badr, remember to add this part where the Prophet prayed the whole night and add this quote to your work. Quranic quote. These are Quranic quotes that can support your answer, the 10-mark answer. Remember, if you add as it is translation, you're going to get an 8, 9, or a 10. If you just if you do the running form and you don't answer it exactly, you will get a 7 to an 8. Okay, so a Quranic quote on the topic of Badr is, indeed, Allah made you victorious at Badr when you were vastly outnumbered. They were vastly outnumbered. Remember, they were 313 and they were 1,000. So be mindful of Allah. Perhaps you will be grateful. This is from Al Imran. And then, to firmly establish the truth and wipe out falsehood, even to the dismay of the wicked. Anfal 8. Then remember when you cried out to your Lord for help, he answered, I will reinforce you with 1,000 angels, followed by many others. Anfal verse number 9. So you can add the first verse and you can add the third verse to support your answer. Muslim army's advantage. Now, the Muslim army had an advantage. What was the advantage? Help of Allah with angels that came in thousands. The military formation, the phalanx that they formed in a circle type, in which they didn't have to have their backs towards the enemy. Then the water supply, having full water supply was beneficial for them. And the sun was on the back of the Muslims, and Muslims' ground was firm. The Makkans' ground was soggy, because remember, the Muslims stood on the sandy ground and the Makkans stood on the soil. And when it rains, sand gets stiff and soils get soggy. Muslims were fighting fi sabilillah, and Makkans were fighting for hatred and to maintain their prestige. Muslims were being seen double the size of the Makkans, and Muslims were seeing Makkans double their own size. It's mentioned in the Quran, this, in fact, that this was an illusion that they could see. This was also created by Allah, that the Muslims were seeing the Makkans double their own size. So if the Makkans were 313, then if the Muslims were 313, so the Muslims saw the Makkans as 626, so they thought it's fine, we can easily fight them. And the Makkans could see the Muslims double their own number. So then the Makkans were 1,000, so seeing the Muslims double their own number, they were seeing the Muslims as 2,000. So this was also a blessing from Allah. This is the map of Badr, in which you can see. Okay, combat. Quraysh 1,000, horses 200, camels 700. Muslims had 313 soldiers, horses only 2, and camels 70. First of all, the war of words. Poets came to shout out insulting poetry. Muslims answered with Allahu Akbar. Then individual combat. Utbah bin Rabi'ah Hamza killed Utbah bin Rabi'ah, and Walid bin Utbah fought with Hazrat Ali, and Hazrat Ali killed Utbah, and Shayba bin Rabi'ah was fighting with Hazrat Ubaidah, and Ubaidah killed him. Killed who? Killed Shayba. Now, I tell my kids, this is a hint that I give my students, that if you see Ubaidah and Shayba, can you see the AI and the AI in Hazrat Ubaidah in the third name and Shayba bin Rabi'a in the third? So Ubaidah, Aba, can you see AI? Just by the rhyming word, remember that Ubaidah killed Shayba. You know, the Muslims, all three Muslims killed the kuffar basically. But how to remember? I tell them to remember by Ubaidah killing Shayba. See the AI and the rhyming sound. And then Hazrat Ali. And if you see Walid, can you see Ali's name in Walid? Then that is how you can remember that Ali killed Walid. And then there's only one left anyway, Utbah and Hamza. So Hamza killed Utbah. Then open general combat occurred, and arrows and catapult stones and swords were used. Abu Jahl and Umayyah bin Khalf were killed. 70 Makkans were also killed. 70 Makkans were taken prisoner, including Uqba bin Abi Mu'ayt, Abbas ibn Muttalib. This is the chacha of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and An-Nazr ibn Harith. 14 Muslims were also martyred in this battle. The war booty, 115 camels and 14 horses, clothes, carpets, war equipment, and fine leather was gained as war booty. 1/5 of the booty was taken as hums for the Prophet's family, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The rest booty was divided amongst the army. Amongst the prisoners, Uqba and Nazr were executed because they were severe persecutioners at the time in Makkah. Ransom was paid for some of the prisoners. If a person was too poor to pay ransom, they were set free. Those who could read and write were ransomed by the teaching of 10 Muslim children to read and write. Those who could read and write, they were told that if you teach our 10 Muslim children how to read and write, after they've learnt it, then you will be free. Significance of the victory of Badr. Muslims' political supremacy over the pagans of Makkah, Muslims gained their political supremacy. Now they are recognized as a political identity, and they won over the pagans of Makkah. It was a decisive battle. It is also known as Yawm al-Furqan. It is, the distinction between good and bad. Glory and prestige of Islam was acknowledged, that now Islam is more prestigious than the kuffar. Miracle victory was the miracle victory was proof of the divine help of the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet's rule was absolute. Many tribes accepted Islam. 11 tribal leaders of Makkah were killed. That's very important. Imagine the strength and the prestige of the Makkans came near to zero. Bani Umayyah's surviving chief Abu Sufyan was made the chief of the Quraysh. And the next time in Uhud, then he comes to fight.